Phil. So here we are. We're going to work on a portrait of Sarah's dad, and let's go ahead and see if we can just continue with working on some of the values and the relationships between those values. One of the things I'm going to do right now is just blow up here, and you can see how even now the eyes are even darker. So we always want to make sure that we're not putting in details that don't need to be there. So with that being said, let's go ahead and I'm going to use my color picker tool, and as you can see here, I'm going to also lower my opacity. And I think it's really important to just ever so slightly see if we can just decrease, but also we always want to look and make sure that the shapes are correct. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just go ahead, and I think this eye is a little bit more larger here, just a tad bit larger. So with that being said, let's see what's happening with this eye. Okay, so now that we did that, we can just go ahead and just very slowly darken the value of the whites of the eyes, because they're pretty much in shadow. And same here, pretty much in shadow. There we go. And maybe we can just ever so slightly darken. The thing is, we want to make sure we don't put detail that's not there. And always paint what we see and not what we want it to be. Right here, I think it's a little dark here, but there is no dark line there. And then this light, I believe, is a little more massive as it comes here. And let's see what's, okay, so let's look at this side of his eye. If you ask me, I would say that the values are still a little light on this side. So let's go ahead and see if we can just, you know, with the airbrush, you would just dust that down a little more. And let's get a really, and then I think you would just really, even more so, just darken down this side of the face. And as you do that, you see that all these values are very close, much closer than what we have. And you don't want to do it too much where you lose the detail that you did do. So you want to make sure that you're a very good distance from the surface. And we're just going to work on. Okay, while I do this, and so we're just going to work on both eyebrows a little bit and make sure we get that shape correctly. There we go. As you can see, we're starting to get some of the character of Sarah's dad. And we can start working on this shape here. Just going to continue trying to shape some of the darker values here in his forehead. And as I'm doing the darker values, you'll see that the lighter values will reveal themselves. So sometimes when you do the negative spaces, the positive spaces or positive shapes reveal themselves and vice versa. So those two things. And then over here, so there's definitely a three-dimensional quality in his forehead here. And we're just going to touch on that a little bit. And remember, if you, in Krita, if you hit the K button, what happens is that it gets one stop darker. L button is one stop lighter. So you can definitely, you don't have to go ahead and search for a color, especially if you're working with the same color, different values. It really makes a lot of sense to just go ahead and hit the K button for darker and the L key for lighter in values. And I'm going to hit the K button once more because I think it's a little bit darker. So what we're going to do is we're going to start hitting the darker values. And as we really work on that shape of the darker values, and they're very close to one another, but still it sort of reveals the lighter shape. So as we do this, we are going to be mindful of his hair over on the right hand side of the painting. And this will be pretty smoothed out. So okay, so we were saying we were going to work on the right side of the painting here. And there is a lighter value, which is his hair. And we just got to make sure we get this right. And you can hit the light button if it's not, the L button, if it's not as light as you want it to be. And you want to make sure you pay attention to the negative space, the distance between these two areas. And then we'll just make sure it's not too light. And you see this shape just comes out like this, and right there, and then a little bit of his hair over here. And then we have this light value coming out like there. And then we have this dark shape right here. And then just comes up just like that. So you see a little bit of his hair showing here. And you can get a little more detailed or more clear as to that shape over here. And there's a little bit of a darker value adjacent to his eyebrow here. And we still have to, and in the last episode I did talk about this area right here, his ear. So you definitely want to address that. I'm not going to address it in this one. It's in the last lesson. So I'm sure you already did that. So we're just going to continue here, maybe darken this ear over here. You don't want to go too dark. And same thing over here. Just really want to work on those shapes. They're so important, and it might seem unimportant, but those minor shapes are very crucial. And we can just darken this down a little bit. Same thing over here. And just continue that here. So now we can work on that hair a little more. And notice that the value from the hair, it's really not, although he does have white hair, it's not white here at all. Then you can basically erase out the eye here, the upper part of his eyelid there, and really see those finer details right there. And okay, so now we could go ahead and maybe start working on his mouth a little bit. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and zoom in on his mouth area. All right. First thing we're going to do is we're going to work on a negative space, which is crucial. Just a little bit. Comes out to a little bit of a point. Alexa, stop. Sorry about that. So we're going to work on his mouth here, and then what we're also going to do, before we get into the values, I'm just going to make sure that as far as the teeth, the negative shapes of the teeth are correct. And I see here that this turn is not quite as low as it needs to be. So the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to fix that negative shape in this particular tooth right here. We have this here, and then this tooth here. Over here, same thing. We have really hardly any delineation between these teeth on this side. So that's good news. It means it's a lot easier. And we'll just ever so lightly work on that. Now, what's really cool is that right here on this side, we're just going to lower the value. Actually, first thing we can do is actually get rid of the line over here between the two teeth. It's almost non-existent. There is a line, but it's on the top and the bottom, but not really in the middle. And let's go ahead and just work on the value here. Really lower that value. Okay. And we have to really pay attention to what's happening here. There we go. And then how wide this other tooth is. It comes down. And then you have this tooth right here. And this is an ongoing process, so we'll be refining this as we go, little by little. But we want to make sure that we don't mess up his smile. There we go. And and then we'll just clean up areas. And then you see that his tooth or his teeth actually come on top of his lip in that side. And like I said, even when I'm working, I make sure that I make his teeth look, look good. Don't want to, when you're doing portraits, you always want to make sure you don't mess up their smile and whatnot. So now I'm going to work on his lip as it comes down here, and you see the light of the lip sort of stops where this front tooth sort of ends. And let's do the shadow or the dark edge of the lip there. And so right here, as I mentioned before, a lot of this side of the mouth really isn't much going on as far as detail. And I mean, we don't want to make it up, right? And we want to make sure, even when we don't see the delineation of the teeth, we don't want to put it in there because we want to see it. And of course we can go ahead and darken this lip here. That seems to come out, yeah, I say right about here. Maybe a little more shallow here. There we go. And so now what we want to do, and what I want you to do, is to darken these values. So I'm going to pick a value that is dark, and you want to darken the values, but you don't want to over dark the darker values. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the darken mode, which would be Alt-Shift-K. And just move this over, and I'm going to darken the value of his teeth, but not darken the darkest darks, if that makes sense. Okay, let's go over here. So you see what I'm doing is really calming down those values. so his teeth are in shadow. And then once that's done, then I can get a lighter value, and that's going to be control. I want to go back to normal, so Alt Shift R. Just make sure we're back to normal, yes. And we're going to go ahead and lighten some of his teeth areas just to give some volume. So you can see did it did do well to go ahead and work on his mouth for a little bit, and then we could maybe just darken some values here, right here, and get a sense of the lower lip. Then right here, his gum. And let's deepen this value here. And then over here, we definitely can put this tooth, this part of his mouth, in shadow. And a lighter value there. And you know, from last lesson, I want you to work on this area, you know, work on this ear, calm down the darks on here, which are really very, very strong. And so that's something you definitely want to work on. And then I remember in the last lesson, we definitely needed to calm this down, get rid of this. All that is really not there. Just calm that down. And I think that would be pretty good to begin here. And we'll just zoom out a little bit. And yeah, so you know, you see we worked on the eyes and made sure that the values are, you know, the irises and the pupils are close in value and pretty dark. And one of the things that you can look is, let's say you're looking at the values of his eyes. You can see if they're as dark as the dark of the hair or maybe similar. So you can triangulate and try and see relative values. This way, if you're keeps you from going too dark or too light, because you're seeing in relative to the whole painting. So I guess I'll stop here, and so this will be just a very quick one. I want you to catch up on this side from last lesson, and then just some of the things with the eyes and the mouth, which were very, very important. The teeth are very crucial, and so that's something that you have to take a lot of time with, and don't worry about working with that with pencil. That would be just fine. All right, and let's see. Okay, well, thank you so much, and I hope you enjoyed this part, and I'll be looking forward to your progress, and we'll go ahead and work on this some more.